You can start.
أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم إن الحمد لله نحمده ونستعينه ونستغفره ونعوذ بالله من شرور أنفسنا ومن سيئات أعمالنا من يهده الله فلا مضل له ومن يضلل فلا هادي له ونشهد أن لا إله إلا الله وحده لا شريك له ونشهد أن محمدا عبده ورسوله إن خير الكتاب كتاب الله وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وسلم وشر الأمور محدثاتها وكل بدعة ضلالة. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuhu. Welcome to the final talk in the book Kitabul Fitr, which is related to the Ashratus Sa'a, the major and minor signs of before the final day of this universe, for the judgment day as well. The events which are mentioned in the Quran, the events which are mentioned in the Hadith, the story of Ibn Sayyad, story of Imam Mahdi alayhi salam, Al-Masih Dajjal, and finally the second coming of Isa alayhi salatu. So last week we studied an overview of the Aqidah of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah about Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And then the first verse, which has been interpreted by the scholars as indicating the nuzul of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, or second coming of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, which was Yukallimun Nasa fil Mahdi wa Kahla wa innahu min as-salihin. We discussed that verse and its tafsir from Imam Tabari, which is the Tafsir bir Rai, and then Imam Razi, which is Imam Tabari's tafsir is Tafsir bir Riwaya, and Imam Razi, whose tafsir is Tafsir bir Rai. So both the reports and intellect, as well as the linguistic meaning of the word kahla, different interpretations. But basically what it means is that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come back and he will fight and kill Ad-Dajjal. He will talk to the people at that time, and he will be old. He will be in his time period or age period, which is referred to as Kahl. So now we will be looking at the second verse, and as I mentioned earlier, that these three verses from Surah Al Imran, Surah Nisa, and Surah Zukhruf use a pronoun. And in order to understand what that or who that pronoun is referring to, we have to look at the verses which are preceding the verse under discussion. The translation that I have given are mostly from Mohammad Asad, but I will be also talking about the explanation given by Yousuf Ali in addition to the Arabic Tafsir. And I will try not to give my opinion, as I mentioned earlier. So the second verse, أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم وإن من أهل الكتاب إلا ليؤمنن به قبل موته ويوم القيامة يكون عليهم شهيدا. It is verse number 159 from Surah An-Nisa. So the explanation by Muhammad Asad's translation and commentary, and he's basing it on the explanation given by Imam Zamakhshari in his Tafsir al-Kashaf. So first the translation, that yet there is not one of the followers of the earlier revelation. And this is Ahl al-Kitab. Now, last week I had mentioned that Muhammad Asad translated Ahl al-Kitab in the context of the verse that we studied earlier. He translated as followers of the gospel and not as people of the book. And I gave you an explanation that since it is in the context of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and Jews did not accept Isa alayhi salatu wasalam as prophet, therefore Muhammad Asad's translation of followers of the gospel was very appropriate. But now, here, he's not translating as followers of the gospel. And this is something important to remember, because this verse is not talking about Christians only. It is talking about the Jews as well. So that's why Muhammad Asad is translating it as, yet there is not one of the followers of the earlier revelation, which would be Torah and Injil, who does not at the moment of his death grasp the truth about Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and on the day of resurrection, he himself shall bear witness to the truth against them. So now let's go back. So first, in min ahlil kitab, no one from among the people of the book, except that he will believe in him. So the first pronoun in him, and there is a difference of opinion. What does him or who does him refer to? Qabla mauti, before his death. Whose death? So those are the two important pronouns that have generated a lot of discussion and debate among our mufassirin, our scholars. So now, if we look at Muhammad Asad's translation, that at the moment of his death grasp the truth about him, and he's translated him as Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So the moment of his death is the death of the follower of the earlier revelation, which means when Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come back, there will be no Christian or Jew who at the time of his death will fail to understand or fail to grasp the truth of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And on the day of resurrection, he himself, and here he is referring to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, shall bear witness to the truth against them. Them would be followers of the book Ahlul Kitab. So now, the literal, he who does not believe in him before his death. وَإِن مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا لَيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ. Now, according to this verse, all believing Jews and Christians realized at the moment of their death that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was truly a prophet of God, having been neither an impostor nor the son of God. So he's making a reference to Zamakshari, and what it implies is that Zamakshari and Muhammad Asad, as well as some of the Mu'tazila, or maybe most of the Mu'tazila, believed that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was not coming back. Again, it's their belief, not the belief of the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So their explanation is that Jews and Christians, at the time of their death, will realize who was Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So the Jews will believe that he was indeed a prophet of Allah, he was not an impostor. And the Christians will believe that he was not son of God. So that's how Muhammad Asad and Zamakhshari have translated. So this is one view. Again, one view. Muhammad and Yousuf Ali, Abdullah Yousuf Ali's translation. And there is none of the people of the book, so the Ahlul Kitab people of the book, but must believe in him before his death. And on the day of judgment, he will be a witness against them. So Yousuf Ali is actually translating it literally by using the pronoun without putting into translation what does that pronoun refer to. But then he gives his commentary. So he says, before his death, qabla mautehi, says interpreters are not agreed as to the exact meaning. Those who hold that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam did not die, which is what we do, majority of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. So the people who hold that Jesus or Isa alayhi salatu wasalam did not die refer the pronoun his to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. They said that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is still living in the body and that he will appear just before the final day, after the coming of the Mahdi, when the world will be purified of sin and unbelief. There will be a final death before the final resurrection, but all will have believed before that final death. So Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will also die, Mahdi will also die, as comes in the Ahadith, and people of the book will also die, but before they die, they will believe in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam as he deserves to be believed, a prophet of Allah and son of Maryam, Ma'azallah, not Ma'azallah, son of Allah. Now, others think that his death, qabla mautehi, is better referred to none of the people of the book, and that the emphatic form must believe, la yu'minanna denotes more a question of duty than of act. So what this means, and this is what I have understood, is that before one of the people of the book dies, he has an obligation to believe in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam as a true prophet of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala and a son of Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. That it is more of a duty, an obligation to the people of the book, that Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala is addressing them, telling them that use your reason. You have time before you die to believe in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam as he deserves to be believed. So that's one explanation. Now let's look at this verse in context. As I said, when you explain one verse in the Quran, you have to look at the preceding verses as well as the following verses in order to understand. So we have already looked at this verse, but I will read it again. وَقَالِهِمْ إِنَّا قَتَلْنَا الْمَسِيحَ عِيسَى ابْنَ مَرْيَمَ رَسُولَ اللَّهِ وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ وَمَا صَلَبُوهُ وَلَكِنْ شُبِهَ لَهُمْ وَإِنَّ الَّذِينَ اخْتَلَفُوا فِيهِ لَفِي شَكٍّ مِّنْهُ مَا لَهُم بِهِ مِنْ عِلْمٍ إِلَّا اتَّبَعَ الظَّنَّ وَمَا قَتَلُوهُ يَقِينًا بل رفعه الله إليه وكان الله عزيزا حكيما وإن من أهل الكتاب إلا ليؤمنن به قبل موته ويوم القيامة يكون عليهم شهيدا. Now, if we read this verse 159 in the light of the verses 157 and 158, to me it seems like the la yu'minanna bihi, believe in him, refers to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Qabla mawtihi, before Isa alayhi salatu wasalam dies. And on the day of judgment, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will be a witness against all of them, or a witness. The alayhim is usually witness over them, which means witness against them, testifying against them. That Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come back. If he doesn't come back, then how will the people of the book believe in him before his death? So qabla mawtihi means qabla mawti Isa. So Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come back, he will die, and then the Qayamat will come. And on the day of judgment, he will be a witness against them, which to my understanding would be people who did not believe him, or they believed him wrongly as Maazallah is an impostor, Maazallah, or as son of Maryam, against Maazallah. So this verse has also been interpreted as evidence from the Quran that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come back, supporting the large number of ahadith. Now that they said, again, this translation we've already read, so we'll go on. Now, Muhammad Asad's explanation continues. He said the Quran categorically denies the story of the crucifixion of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So he believes as well, Mu'tazila also believe, there is no Muslim who does not believe about that. No, we Muslims believe that he was not crucified, he was not killed. Now, many commentators believe that at the last moment, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala substituted for Jesus a person closely resembling him. According to some account, that person was Judas, or Judas Iscariot, that he was the 13th disciple who betrayed Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And it was Judas Iscariot who was subsequently crucified in his place. The Quran and the authentic ahadith do not describe it this way. So that part is true. The Quran doesn't mention about another person being substituted for Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Although you can say Shubbiha lahum may refer to it. Again, Allah knows best. There is no authentic hadith that actually describes this, although this is mentioned in the Tafsir. But again, those riwayah in the Tafsir are not marfu ahadith. Now, walakin Shubbiha lahum, but it only appeared to them as if it had been so, implying that, this is Muhammad Asad's explanation, implying that in the course of time, long after the time of Jesus, a legend had somehow grown up to the effect that he had died on the cross in order to atone for the original sin with which mankind is allegedly burdened. Again, we Muslims do not believe in this. And this legend became so firmly established. That's why Muhammad Asad is saying that this is a legend that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam died on the cross for the original sin. And we don't believe in that. And Muhammad Asad doesn't believe in that. And this legend became so firmly established among the later day followers of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam that even the Jews began to believe it, albeit in a derogatory sense, for crucifixion was in those times a heinous form of death penalty reserved for the lowest of criminals. So the long and short is that Shubbiha lahum is that people who followed, who came in later generations, were under the misbelief based upon maybe some fake news circulating at the time that Maazallah Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was crucified and he died on the cross in atonement for the original sin, which again is something denied completely by the Quran and the Hadith. And this concept came much later after Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, when the belief in Trinity started and people started to explain theology on the basis of philosophy. Now, what are the different Christian views? And Yousuf Ali has given a very good account of it, because not all Christians have the same view when it comes to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. There were those who believed in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam just as we Muslims believe in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. There were those, this is according to Surah Maida, there were those who thought that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was one of three gods. We don't believe it. And then there were those who thought that Isa was the God. Ma'azallah, we again don't believe it. Now, what are the different other views which are given by Yousuf Ali? And Yousuf Ali was a real scholar. So he said the Orthodox Christian churches make it a cardinal point of their doctrine that his life, that is the life of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, was taken on the cross, that he died and was buried, that on the third day he rose in the body with his wounds intact and walked about and conversed and ate with his disciples, and was afterwards taken up bodily to heaven. Now, this is necessary for the theological doctrine of blood sacrifice and vicarious atonement for sins, which is rejected by Islam. So, this view of the Orthodox Christian Church is something that we Muslims do not believe. And the second view is the view of the Basilidians, who believe that someone else was substituted for him, and this has found its way into our tafsir as well. The next belief is the belief of the Docetae, who held that Christ never had a real physical or natural body, but only an apparent or phantom body, and that his crucifixion was only apparent, not real. So if somebody is not, somebody does not have a physical body, but only has an apparent or phantom body, then crucifixion doesn't make sense at all. So they didn't think that there was any crucifixion. The Marcionite Gospel, which dates back to around 138 year of the current era, denied that Jesus was born. They merely said that he appeared in human form. So they don't go with the Immaculate Conception and the birth of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, as has been discussed in the Gospels, and the Quran talks about that too. Now, the Gospel of St. Barnabas supported the theory of substitution on the cross. And again, as I mentioned, this has also found its place in our older tafasir and still continues. Now, bar rafa'ullahu ilayhi, and Allah elevated him to Allah. So there is a difference of opinion as to the exact interpretation of these words. The words are, the Jews did not kill Jesus, but Allah raised him up, rafa'u, to rafa'u, to himself. One school holds that Jesus did not die the usual human death, but he still lives in the body in heaven, which is the generally accepted Muslim view. And on the night of Isra and Miraj, the Prophet ﷺ met with Isa ﷺ as well. Now, from the Tafsir, Imam Qala Abu Jafar is Imam Tabari. He mentioned that the people who explain the Quran have disagreed about this verse. I've already mentioned, but now it's in more detail. So it says some of them said that wa immin ahlil kitab illa la yu'minanna bihi means yani bi Isa. La yu'minanna bihi will believe in him, that is Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, qabla mawtihi yani qabla mawti Isa, which I've already explained. Now Abi Malik says illa la yu'minanna bihi qabla mawtihi, that the explanation of this part, that people of the Ahlul Kitab, people of the book, will believe in him before his death. ذلك عند نزول عيسى ابن مريم لا يبقى أحد من أهل الكتاب إلا ليؤمنن به. That this will happen when Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come back, and there will be nobody among the people of the book except that they will believe in him. So all Ahlul Kitab at the time of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam coming back will believe in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam as he deserves to be built. وقال آخرون يعني بذلك وإن من أهل الكتاب إلا ليؤمنن بإيسى قبل موت الكتاب. That all people of the book will believe in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam before they die. So Mawtehi is not referring to the Mawt of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, but the Mawt of the Ahlul Kitab. And the last opinion, I've highlighted it, but it is not the majority opinion. وقال آخرون ما ذلك وإن من أهل الكتاب إلا ليؤمنن بمحمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم قبل موت الكتاب. This is a rare opinion, but because it is an opinion mentioned in our authentic, our reputable tafasir, I just wanted to bring it in, that there's further explanation of that which I found from other scholars, that a people of the book either a Christian or a Jew, at the time of his death is shown the face of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, and at that time he will believe in Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam. Again, Allah knows best. I don't know where they got it from, but this is something that has been mentioned. Now, what is the opinion of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma? And this opinion is reported to us by one of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma's students, Ikrama. He says that وَإِن مِّنْ أَهْلِ الْكِتَابِ إِلَّا لَيُؤْمِنَنَّ بِهِ قَبْلَ مَوْتِهِ قَالَ لَا يَمُوتُ يَهُودِيٌّ حَتَّى يُؤْمِنَ بِعِيسَى ابْنِ مَرْيَمَ, that no Jew will die until he believes in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So this was the belief of Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma. Now, he was asked this question, وَإِن ضُرِبَ بِالسَّيْفِ, what if that person has been killed with a sword? Say يَتَكَلَّمُ بِهِ. قال وإن هوي يتكلم به وإن هوى يتكلم به وهو يهوي. What if he's falling to his death? Is that he will believe while he's falling. Now, other questions and answers are that even if a person is drowned and Ahl Kitab is drowned, or if he's burnt to death, or if he falls upon a wall, or if he's eaten up by a beast, Ibn Abbas said, لا تخرج روحه من جسده حتى يقذف فيه الإيمان بعيسى, that his soul will not exit his body until Iman in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is put into his heart. So this was Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu's explanation that Jews at the time of their death, no matter how they die, they will believe in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Allahu alam. Now, this is from Hadith, and it's narrated by Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala anhu, except that the last part is a statement of Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala anhu, not of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam. The hadith, the riwayah is muttafaqun alayh, mentioned by both Imam Bukhari and Imam Muslim. So Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala said that Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam walladhi nafsi biyadihi la yushakanna an yanzala fikum ibn Maryam hakaman adalan fayaksir كسر يكسر فيكسر الصليب ويقتل الخنزير ويدعو الجزية ويفيد المال حتى لا يقبله أحد حتى تكون السجدة الواحدة خيرا من الدنيا وما فيها. That the Prophet said that in whose hand, by him in whose hand is my life, that it is near that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will descend among you as a judge, a just judge, who will break the cross, who will kill the pig, and who will remove the jizya. If everybody believes in Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, there is no concept of jizya now. Everybody is a Muslim. And there will be plenty of wealth. And nobody will accept any money from anybody. There'll be too much money. And one sajda will be better than the entire world and whatever the world contains. Now, these are the words of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam as reported by Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala anhu. But after mentioning this, Summa yaqulu Abu Huraira. Now, Abu Huraira radiallahu ta'ala anhu gives his own understanding. He says, Faqraw in shaitum, that you can recite if you want, wa in min ahlil kitabi illa la yu'minanna bihi qabla mawtihi. So he's explaining this hadith, explaining this ayah on the basis of this hadith, that this verse is referring to the nuzul of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam before the end of the time. So again, this is an understanding of a Sahabi. The third verse about the coming of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is from Surah Zukhruf, وَإِنَّهُ لَإِلْمٌ لِلسَّاعَةِ فَلَا تَمْتَرُنَّ بِهَا وَاتَّبِعُونِي هَذَا الصِّرَاطُ مُسْتَقِيمٌ. And here again, innahu, and indeed he, is a pronoun, and we have to look at the context to see whether it really refers to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So let's look at it. So now what are the different translations? I'm giving you three different translations from Muhammad Asad, Yousuf Ali, and Muhammad Piktal. So Muhammad Asad's translation, and behold, this divine writ. So now if we go back to the verse, innahu, indeed it, or indeed he. According to Muhammad Asad, this pronoun is referring to the divine writ, which is the revelation. Is indeed a means to know that the last hour is bound to come, hence have no doubt whatever about it, but follow me. This alone is a straight way. So again, as I mentioned, the Mu'tazila, the rationalists, do not believe that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come back in body. Yousuf Ali and Jesus. So now Yousuf Ali's explanation of innahu, indeed he is, it refers to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, shall be a sign for the coming of the hour of judgment. Therefore have no doubt about the hour, but follow ye me. This is a straight way. So Yusuf Ali believes that innahu, indeed he is referring to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, as the majority of scholars believe. Now Muhammad Piqtal's translation, and lo, verily there is knowledge of the hour. So now if you look at it, wa innahu la ilmul lis-sa'a. So he is actually not even translating the pronoun who. He's saying, and lo, verily there is knowledge of the hour, which is la ilmus sa'a. So doubt ye not concerning it, but follow me. This is the right path. So just these three translations tell you that there is a disagreement among the scholars, among the Mufassirin, about what this verse implies. Does it really refer to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam coming back? And let's see now. So now the what are the verses before that so that we can put this verse in proper context? So now if we look at the very first verse, وَلَمَّا ضُرِبَ ابْنُ مَرْيَمَ مَثَلًا إِذَا قَوْمُكَ مِنْهُ يَصِدُّونَ. So this entire sequence of verses is starting with Ibn Maryam, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. وقالوا أآلهتنا خير أم هو ما ضربوه لك إلا جدلا بل هم قوم خصمون إن هو إلا عبد أنعمنا عليه وجعلناه مثلا لبني إسرائيل ولو نشاء لجعلنا منكم ملائكة في الأرض ولو نشاء لجعلنا منكم ملائكة في الأرض يخلفون. And then the verse. So if we look at it here, the first thing is Ibn Maryam. It starts with Ibn Maryam, and then in huwa illa abdun, he was nothing but a servant, referring again to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So this is the usual style of speech as well as style of writing, that you mention a noun first, and then the subsequent statement, subsequent lines will be referring to that individual, to that noun as a pronoun. So now let's look at the translations. When Maryam's son Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is quoted as an example, your people, or Muhammad sallallahu alaihi wasallam, raise a clamor, there is a noise at it, and say, are our gods better or is he? He is referring to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. They cite this to you merely to provoke you. They are but a quarrelsome people. As for Isa, in huwa illa abdun, abdun. Obviously, abdun ma'azallah summa ma'azallah cannot refer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. So the abdun goes back to Ibn Maryam. As for Jesus, he was nothing but a human being, a servant of ours, whom we had graced with prophethood, and whom we made an example for the children of Israel. And hence we so willed, or you worship angels. So again, this is referring to the Quraysh who were assigning divinity or attributing divinity to angels. We could indeed have made you into angels succeeding one another on earth. So again, only there is only Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. He doesn't have daughters, which according to some people were the daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. The angels were daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ma'azallah. And he doesn't need a son, and Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was not his son. So if you look at these verses 57 through 60, before verse number 61, they are talking about the belief of some people about Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ma'azallah, having a son, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, and a reference to the angels as daughters of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, ma'azallah. So here, if we go back to this verse, innahu, the pronoun seems to refer more likely to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, an explanation of وَلَوْ نَشَاءُ لَجَعَلْنَا مِنْكُمْ مَلَائِكَةً فِي الْأَرْضِ يَخْلُفُونَ, given by Muhammad Asad on the basis of Imam Badawi's Tafsir, implying not only that Jesus was not a supernatural being, but that the angels too are mere created beings, finite in their existence, as indicated by the phrase succeeding one another, and therefore utterly removed from the status of divinity. Now, if you look at this explanatory part, it starts with implying not only that Jesus. The reason I'm bringing it up again is that the entire sequence, the entire passage not just one word, but the entire passage is referring to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, let's look at this verse again. وَإِنَّهُ لَإِلْمٌ لِلسَّاعَةِ فَلَا تَمْتَرُنَّ بِهَا وَاتَّبِعُونِي هَذَا الصِّرَاطُ مُسْتَقِيمٌ. In it, and now comes Imam Razi's explanation. He says, وَإِنَّهُ أي Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So Razi was an intellectual. He had read other tafsir before him. He knew the opinions of the earlier scholars. And then he used his intellect to choose what he thought was the stronger opinion. So according to Imam Razi, وَإِنَّهُ, and indeed he, is not referring to the divine writ. It is not referring to simply the knowledge. It is referring to Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. And what does he say now? La ilmu lissa shartum min ashratiha. And I explained to you that when we talk about ashrat sa, the shart, which is the singular of ashrat, doesn't necessarily mean condition. It means condition as well, but it also means a sign. So here he said that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is one of the signs. تُؤْلَمُ بِهِ فَسُمِيَ الشَّرْطُ الدَّالُ عَلَى الشَّيْءِ علما للحصول العلم به وقراء ابن عباس لا علم وهو العلامة. That this is a sign through which we can achieve the knowledge of something as well. And that knowledge of something, that something is the asa. And then he refers to Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhu's qiraat of this verse, that Ibn Abbas has read la ilm as al-alama, that he actually read la alamul sa'a, that this is he, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, is actually a sign of the hour, of the final day. Now, Imam Tabari mentions, which is, he goes into the detail and then gives different opinions, that Ahlut Tawil, which again mean people of the Tafsir or Mufassirun, have disagreed with fil ha. Ha is the pronoun wa innahu wa mal ma'ni biha. What does it mean? What does it refer to? And it says some of them mention that hiya min zikr Isa wa hiya aidatun alayhi. And waqalu man al kalam inna Isa alayhi salatu wasalam zahuruhu ilmun yu'lamu bihi maji'us sa'a. لأن ظهوره من أشراطها ونزوله إلى الأرض دليل على فناء الدنيا وإقبال الآخرة. So he's actually referring to the mainstream Islamic view that this verse means that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come. His zuhur, his coming back, his reappearance, it will be a sign which will give us a knowledge that the final hour is very close, because his coming is one of the signs, and his coming back to the earth will be an evidence that this dunya will now perish and the akhirah, the final day, final judgment is coming. So that is the explanation. Now, an Ibn Abbas, وَإِنَّهُ لَعَلَمُ لِلسَّاعَةِ, that Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma read this verse, وَإِنَّهُ لَعَلَمُ لِلسَّاعَةِ قَالَ نُزُولُ عِيسَى ibn Maryam. So even Ibn Abbas radiallahu ta'ala anhuma, the Hibrul Ummah, the scholar of Islam, he himself believed that this verse is referring to the coming back of Isa ibn Maryam alayhi salatu wasalam. And Mujahid, one of the students of Ibn Abbas, mentioned that this is a sign of the hour that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will come qabla yawm al-qiyamah. And Qatada also refers by saying Nuzul Isa ibn Maryam ilmun lis-sa'a al-qiyamah, that coming back of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will be a sign of the coming of the hour. So you have the earlier scholars of Islam, including a Sahabi, as well as Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu, another Sahabi, who all believe that these verses are referring to the coming back of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. Now, waqala akharun. I think this goes to the honesty of our earlier scholars, that they do not give only one opinion, they give other opinions as well. So you say, Al-Ha allati fi qawlihi wa innahu min dhikr al-Qur'an وإن هذا القرآن لعلم للساعة يعلمكم بقيامها ويخبركم عنها وعن أهوالها. That innahu is referring to the Quran, and that's how why Muhammad Asad translated as the divine writ. So this is not just opinion of one individual. Imam at-Tabari was 1,000 years before Muhammad Asad. So this view has been going on even from the earlier times, that it's referring to the Quran because Quran gives us the knowledge of the hour, and it tells us about the Qiyamah and the events surrounding it. Now, Anas bin Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu says something, and there is an addition to this hadith. And the reason why I'm bringing this, I recently read a book written by an Indian scholar, I will not mention his name, in which he gave a totally different view, his own opinion. He has built his view, his aqidah, on the basis of a hadith. And I want to discuss that hadith in a little bit of a detail. So now let's start with this hadith, and then I will tell you what is the view of that scholar. That Anas bin Malik radiallahu ta'ala anhu mentions a hadith which is from At-Tirmidhi, although it is also mentioned in Ibn Majah, that Qala Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam said that Masala ummati masalul matr. The example of my ummah is like the example of the rain. La yudra akhiruhu khair am awaluhu. It is not known whether the last of it is better or the first of it is better. And then Zada Razin. Razin was another muhaddis. He was also one of the earlier, not earlier, but later muhaddisin who collected the ahadith. But he is not among the top category of the muhaddisin. And he added, now this addition could be from Ibn Majah, because this is where I read from other books, that وَإِنَّهُ لَا مَهْدِي إِلَّا إِيسَى ibn Maryam, that Mahdi is nothing but Isa bin Maryam. This is an important part, but I will tell you a little bit more. وَأَنَا أَوْلَى النَّاسِ بِهِ, and I am closer to him than people. لَيْسَ بَيْنِي وَبَيْنَهُ النَّبِيُّ, between him and between me there is no prophet. So there is no prophet after the Prophet ﷺ except Isa ibn Maryam, who will not be a new prophet because he had already come. And when he comes back, he will be following the Sharia of Muhammad ﷺ. قَالَ وَسَمِعْتُهُ يَقُولُ, and I heard him say that لَن تُهْلِكَ أُمَّةٌ أَنَا أَوَّلُهَا وَمَهْدِيُّهَا أَوْسَطُهَا وَالْمَسِيحُ آخِرُهَا, that the ummah will not be destroyed, whose first is me. So the Prophet ﷺ is the first of this ummah, and Mahdi is in the middle, and Masih alayhi salatu wasalam, Isa alayhi salatu wasalam will be at the end. Now, this hadith, this report is actually rejected by majority of the scholars. And I will give you the reasons. Now, this scholar from India, and I read a couple of his booklets in which he says that he considered this hadith to be authentic, although he doesn't give any references to that. He just mentioned this thing, and he says that there is no Mahdi, there is no Isa alayhi salatu wasalam, but an individual come at the end of the time who will fulfill the role described in the ahadith that Mahdi will fulfill, and who will fulfill the role that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam played in his first life, in his life, basically. So he's saying that Mahdi will not come and Isa alayhi salam will not come. This is a view of one scholar based upon a hadith which has been rejected. Now let me just mention an academic point, which is what I've learned. You can check it, or you should check it. The coming back of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is part of our aqidah. It is not part of the ibadat like the salat, the hajj, zakat, fasting. It is a matter of aqidah. The basis of Islamic aqidah is Quran and authentic ahadith. In fact, the scholars mention that we cannot base our aqidah even on the Hasan ahadith, and Daif ahadith, Maudu ahadith cannot be used at all as a basis for our aqidah. When it comes to the ibadat, which is, for example, should you say Ameen loudly or not? Should you raise your hands in the ruku or not? Here we can use Sahih as well as Hasan ahadith, not the Daif ahadith, because we have Sahih and Hasan ahadith which are sufficient. The Daif ahadith, not the Maudu. According to Ahlul Hadith, Daif and Maudu, weak and fabricated ahadith, are in the same category, but other scholars disagree. They say Maudu is fabricated, which we cannot use at all. But the Daif ahadith have a possibility that they may be true. And Daif ahadith can be used for Fadail al-Amal, the virtues of good deeds, or they may be used if there is no Sahih or Hasan hadith in some matter. Now, with this background, let's move on. So, Imam Ash-Shawkani mentions that there are 50 ahadith and 28 other opinions from the Sahaba and the scholars about Mahdi that we are expecting. And if you collect all of them, they reach the level of tawatur. So this becomes like a mutawatir. Mutawatir is a very high status that so many people in so many categories have said the same thing, that it is extremely unlikely that they were all lying. So there are so many different hadiths about Mahdi and his description that we cannot overrule all of these hadiths on the basis of a zaif and munkar hadith, that there is no Mahdi or we shouldn't even be waiting for him. Now, as far as he said, Amma hadith Ibn Majah and Nabi Sallallahu Alaihi Wasallam qala la Mahdi illa Isa ibn Maryam fahuwa hadith daif. It's a weak hadith. In fact, it is also that one of the narrators is majhul, who is unknown, and huwa matruk. Matruk is people leave what he says. Now, they don't accept this thing. And Shaykhul Islam Ibn Taymiyyah and Imam Shawkani, they both consider this to be a maudu, fabricated hadith. So that is an important thing to remember, that we cannot base any article of faith on a weak or rejected hadith, and certainly accepting that view of an Indian scholar. Again, I'm nothing personal against him. Accepting his view would mean rejecting all the other ahadith on this issue, as well as the explanation of the scholars of the three verses of the Quran that we have studied this week and the last week. So I'll just give you some different views. So the traditional view about Mahdi alayhi salatu wasalam and Isa alayhi salatu wasalam is that Isa alayhi salatu wasalam was elevated by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala in body and soul, and he will return as mentioned in the authentic ahadith. And al-Mahdi wa annahu min ahli baytihi. Mahdi will be from the Ahl Bayt of the Prophet ﷺ. According to the hadith, he will be from the lineage of Hassan والسلام, who was the grandson of the Prophet ﷺ. And he will rule for 7 years. He will be a very just leader. And then Isa والسلام, will emerge, second coming of Isa والسلام, and he will help him in killing Dajjal. And he will be leading the Ummah in the prayer, and Isa والسلام, will pray behind him. This is the traditional view of the majority of Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah, and I personally don't think that I can deviate from something which is believed by the Ahl Sunnah wal Jama'ah. The other views, again, I don't subscribe to those views, but I'm just mentioning those views for academic discussion. That one view is that Isa والسلام, escaped somehow. He was not crucified, and he died later on. But he will later return as mentioned in the authentic hadith. It's one view. Next view, we don't know exactly what happened to Isa والسلام, and he will not return. This is a minority view. Very rare view, which I mentioned just recently, just a few minutes ago, is that Isa والسلام, and Mahdi والسلام, are not separate individuals, but they refer to some individual who will come towards the end of the time, and he will play a role which has been mentioned in the hadith. So with this, Allah's Ta'ala, with Allah's fadl, Allah's mercy, we have been able to complete the Kitabul Fitan. I didn't include some other ahadith. You can read this chapter in Sahih Muslim. And if you want to read more, then Kitab Mishkatul Masabi, which is a collection of ahadith, has a lot more ahadith besides the ahadith mentioned in Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. I think Aqidah is very important. And my belief is that I should be part of the Jama'ah. I should not have an opinion because I'm only a scholar. I should believe what the majority of the Ummah believes in it. There are multiple ahadith, and there are scholars and Sahaba who, based upon the three verses of the Quran that we have studied last week and today, as referring to the second coming of Isa alayhi salatu wasalam. So the safe thing for a Muslim is to believe in the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala as explained by people who are more knowledgeable than we are, and as supported by the hadith of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, which have reached us through authentic chain of transmission. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala forgive me if I made any mistake. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala guide us to the straight path, the Sirat al-Mustaqim. May we not die except as Muslims. May Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala accept this effort. If I made any mistake, if I said something wrong, if there is something that you don't agree with me, please forgive me. I'm only a student. And inshallah, we will be starting another series which Imam Asif and I have discussed, and that will include first talk about the evolution of the Islamic fiqh. It will be very brief. I will not go into any juristic details or differences. And then we will be looking at the lives of the four major Imams, Imam Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, Imam Ahmad ibn Hanbal. It will not be a controversial presentation. We will be looking at the critical role played by these ulama in establishing Islamic fiqh. They may disagree, but their disagreements are with respect. We have to respect them. They all have their evidences from Quran and Sunnah. We may want to follow one madhab, that's okay, but we should respect all of them who were the pioneers of Islamic fiqh. And inshallah, Bismillah ta'ala, we will be discussing some other scholars, including the major muhaddiseen, the minor muhaddiseen, and other fuqaha and other scholars of Islam, as well as some of the pioneers of Islamic revival as well. أقول قولي هذا واستغفر الله لي ولكم ولذكر الله أكبر. الصلاة والسلام على رسول الله صلى الله عليه وسلم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته.